Hello, sixth graders. We are on lesson 2 in our science chapter. So this one's going to be on friction and gravity. Last time we looked at forces, the start of that, and we looked at a net force and what that meant. So now we're going to look at friction and gravity. So first, as always, I'll move my bubble over here. Maybe. There we go. So we're going to read about space athletes. So, have you ever seen pictures of astronauts playing golf on the moon or playing catch in a space station? Golf balls and baseballs can float or fly farther in space where gravitational forces are weaker than they are on Earth. Imagine what professional sports would be like in reduced gravity. You may not have to imagine much longer. At least one company specializes in airplane flights that simulate a reduced gravity environment. Similar to NASA training flights the astronauts use when preparing to go into space, these flights allow passengers to fly around the cabin. In environments with reduced gravity, athletes can perform jumps and stunts that would be impossible on Earth. As technology improves, permanent stadiums could be built in space for a whole new generation of athletes. So, sports can be more fun in reduced gravity. What jobs could be harder or less fun to do in space and why? Just want you to think about that one. Doesn't have to have an answer. And then what kind of sports do you think could be more fun in space and why? So I think that disc golf would be more fun. So if you were on the Zoom meeting last week, Friday, you heard that disc golf is one of my favorite sports. But I think it would be more fun because the distance record is only 800 feet, 800 and some feet, I don't remember exactly. And it's usually set on days where it's really windy and the wind is helping the disc. So the wind can also hurt it. But on days that it's windy and helping, you can throw really far. So I just think it would be really interesting to see what a disc flies like in space. All right, so we have 2 key questions today. What factors affect friction and what factors affect gravity? So first, what is friction? Friction is the force that 2 surfaces exert on each other when they rub against each other. And so then what factors affect friction? 2 factors that, affect the force of friction are the types of surfaces involved and how hard the surfaces are pushed together. In general, smooth surfaces produce less friction than rough surfaces. Friction increases when surfaces push harder against each other, and friction acts in a different direction opposite to the direction of the object's motion. So kind of like, if you remember about anything about plate tectonics or tectonic plates, they kind of like hit each other. So that would kind of be like friction when you're going against each other. Without friction, a moving object will not stop until it strikes another object. So let me move my bubble. Here we have a picture of sliding friction. You can see a little penguin. He's sliding, so he's moving to the right, but the friction is working to the left. So sliding friction occurs when 2 solid surfaces slide over each other. It makes moving objects slide down and stop. Static friction, it's keeping the koala bear onto the tree. It acts between objects that aren't moving. If you are moving a couch across the room, if you don't push hard enough, it won't move. Fluid friction. So you have here a manatee who would be swimming in the ocean, which is a fluid. It occurs when a solid object moves through a fluid. Easier to overcome than sliding friction. And that is also why sidewalks are slippery when they're wet. Okay? And finally, we have rolling friction, which occurs when an object rolls across a surface. So here we have an apple being rolled. It's easier to overcome than sliding friction for similar materials. So it's easier to push a bike on a sidewalk when the wheels are turning, but when you are holding the brakes, it becomes harder because the bike is not moving. Instead, you're working against the bike. So now we have gravity. Move my bubble again. Gravity is the force that pulls objects toward each other. Universal gravitation means that gravity acts throughout the universe, not just Earth. We have Newton's law of universal gravitation. The force of gravity acts between all objects in the universe that have mass. Different strength of the pull. So Earth has a really strong gravitational force, which keeps us standing instead of floating around. But if you were to go to outer space, there's not as much. So we do not notice the pull to other planets or the moon because the pull or the gravity to Earth is so great. So two factors that affect the gravitational attraction between objects are mass and weight. Mass, now I'm going to move down here. Mass is the measure of the amount of matter in an object, and its SI unit that is measured in is generally kilograms. More mass means greater the gravitational attraction. So the heavier you are, the greater the Earth is pulling you. It also depends on the distance. As distance increases, the gravitational force decreases. Weight is a measure of the force of gravity on an object. So when you stand on a scale, it actually displays the gravitational force that the Earth is exerting on you. So it shows you how much gravitational force the Earth is pulling. Mass, so your mass, which is the measure of the amount of matter, is going to be the same on other planets, but your weight is what's going to change because that is affected by gravity. So here we have a little dog. He's on Earth. He weighs 60 newtons. So what will he weigh on the moon and what will he weigh on Mars? So the moon is about 1/6 of your weight that's on Earth. So he's going to only weigh 10 newtons on the moon. On Mars, it's about 9/25 of the weight on Earth. So he weighed 60 newtons on Earth, so now he's going to weigh about 23 on Mars. So our vocabulary: friction, the force that two surfaces exert on each other when they rub against each other. Sliding friction occurs when two solid surfaces slide over each other. Static friction acts between objects that aren't moving. Fluid friction occurs when a solid object moves through a fluid. Rolling friction occurs when an object rolls across a surface. Gravity is the force that pulls objects toward each other. Mass is the measure of the amount of matter in an object, typically measured in kilograms. Weight is a measure of the force of gravity on an object. And your assignment is going to be answering the questions on Edmodo for this lesson due Thursday. As always, let me know if you have any questions.